Hey everybody, welcome to Secret Spaces. We will give everyone a couple more minutes to join and then we'll get started. All right, we'll go ahead and kick this off. Welcome to Secret Spaces. This is a weekly Twitter space featuring contributors to Secret Network and news from around the ecosystem. This week we're going to be talking about the Blockchain Futurist Conference, which we were attending last week in Toronto, Canada. We have someone here striking. We actually met him at the conference. He is a crypto media personality, does some interviews and has a YouTube channel. So glad to have him with us. He'll be sharing some feedback from his time at the conference. And he did an interview with Lisa from Secret Network. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And we also have Lindsay here with us, who is also at the conference with us. So we don't really have any planned agenda. We're just going to have a casual conversation here. Striking, if you want to give yourself a quick introduction, feel free.
Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, or good evening, wherever in the world you're coming to us from. Thanks for the introduction. I appreciate it. My name is Tom, as I say, otherwise known as Striking in the digital media world, because when crypto started, everyone had an alt name, and that's. But my name is Tom Hurley. I run an organization called the DYOR Media Network. It's just a small little group, meaning me and some volunteers that help me out in coming up with, as I say, it's not the usual YouTube channel or things like that, which people are making token calls and yo bro and let's go to the moon, boys, that type of stuff. But actually trying to cover topics that people want to learn about in a manner that's more high level and not getting too much into the weeds about things. And I have a couple of shows that we run on our network. I have my morning show called DYOR Live, in which I come on and banter about the markets. I have a crypto chart analyst that comes on and talks about where BTC is going and so forth. And then we usually have an interview with somebody on a topic or something like that. And it's kind of growing. The viewership in the mornings is, as like I say, isn't always great live, but as we get to replays and more importantly, using it as marketing material for the people I interview, in which they chop up the videos and put social media posts out with good quotes and quips and things like that. That's where we get a real traction, things like that. And then I have another fun show I call Rugged, Ruined, and Wrecked, in which I go over the projects and that either because they've been somebody rugged a project or they got hacked or just from simple management malpractice, everything went to zero in it. And I do that in a manner which uses a little bit of education, making fun of people, not because they lost money, but because bad things happen and people that are coming into crypto need to learn how to stay away from things, because everyone listening to this, I'm sure, has learned a lesson the hard way in crypto. And if someone can at least walk you through the ways that bad things happen, then that's all good. And then we do a couple other things. We have podcasts and chit chats and things like that with people in the industry, and just try to have a lot of fun while bringing new info to people in crypto. So that's what I do. Patrick, thanks for the introduction. And I enjoyed having Lisa stop by the booth at the Blockchain Futurist Conference for sure.
Yeah, thanks for being with us here, Tom. So I think I saw that was actually your first conference for like the DYOR Media Group. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. I've been trying to, as everyone has to deal with all the things going on in their life and the cost of travel. Generally, going to all the different shows is not in the budget, as they say. But this one works out. I split my time between Chicago and Ottawa, Ontario. And Toronto's right in the middle of that. And so I ended up being able to go to that one and set up a nice booth. And from what I tell people, I've been going to trade shows my whole life for various industries and things like that. And this type of conference in certain aspects is no different, which there's speakers and there are booths and people talking about trying to hawk their wares, as they say, and then breakout sessions and all types of things. But one of the more interesting parts of the Futurist Conference, that I watched from going to bazillions of trade shows, was the level of optimism. Even people that talk about, bear markets and this type of stuff. One of the things that is really, really obvious going to these shows is the level of optimism, regardless of price or investment levels. People understand, well, what I could tell from being at the show, people are excited about development of new products, new technologies, coming up with new ways to do old things, coming up with better ways to do new things, and seeing what can be made happen by the time the conference comes around next year. So the optimism level is very much there, and it was in where I sat I was basically in the back of the main hall all the time, where all the camera and media folks were. And so I ended up watching all of the sessions, and with some great speakers. I was quite surprised to see the draw of the breadth of the speakers the that Untraceable and the blockchain futurist people were able to bring to the event. I was very happy with that, and I was very happy being able to interview some of them. It was great. I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to doing that one again, and hopefully, picking up some new sponsors for the DYOR network, so they can take me to the ones in the other parts of the world too. So it was good.
Yeah, definitely agree with you on like the optimism and the energy of the conference. You definitely couldn't tell that we're in a bear market, I think. If you
Yeah.
just take a look at how many people are there and walking around and enthusiastically walking up to our booth and like asking about Secret, and it was great. We had a ton of foot traffic. I was at the booth most of the time, so I didn't get to hear any of the speakers really on stage. Um, maybe later on you could tell us a little bit about like maybe some of your favorite things that you heard talked about. But we did have Lisa Loud from Secret Network Foundation. She was up on stage at one point, and we also had with Lisa and Phoenix. Phoenix being another project kind of related to Secret, doing some privacy preserving smart contracts with fully homomorphic encryption. We had them both on stage in the hackathon area at one point, so definitely had some presence on those stages, and we had a nice little booth and talked to a whole bunch of people um, walking through. So we also have Lindsay here. Lindsay, do you want to give just like a quick recap of your overall thoughts on the conference?
Yeah, first, I just want to say I really appreciate Tom striking your commitment to not being like the other bros on YouTube with Bitcoin and
Yo, bro.
yeah. I chuckled when you said that. I was like, that's fantastic. But yeah, I echo both of your sentiments. I think Futurist was optimistic, but more realistic than I think people were at UCC in Paris and at Nebular. Even by the time I landed in Paris, everyone was like, bear market's over, bull market's back. And it's like, that's a nice sentiment, but there's no data to really back that up. But I think everyone at Futurist was realistically optimistic, and I thought that felt safer and just more reasonable. So to see optimism, like well-founded optimism, was really nice and great enthusiasm all around. People that were learning about our Phoenix project were so excited. There were a lot of enthusiastic hackers. So it was just really nice to see enthusiasm and kind of that passion coming back. I really liked that aspect.
Yep. Talking a little bit more about the hackathon, we had a hackathon that we co-sponsored with Phoenix, and that was organized by Dora Hacks. And we basically had a little area where we had a kind of like a second mini booth where we could mentor people that were interested in the hackathon. Had some good conversations there. Still waiting to hear back on our submissions, which we should be hearing back about this week. So hopefully we'll have some more to report on that later on. But definitely had a bunch of people interested, and a lot of people finding out about Phoenix for the first time, which is cool. I guess just some general connections that we made I can talk about. Still pretty
Can
early
we
stage.
can we shout out Dora Hacks real quickly, because they have been supporting us at all of our events. They came to our events in Prague. They came to our events in Paris. Like, they've just been really solid and supportive of Secret lately.
Yeah, I don't know if they're like Cosmos specific. I don't think they are, but they seem to really be. They have a presence at like every single Cosmos event, it seems. So they're definitely um, a driving force right now behind hackathons. I think both within Cosmos and in other ecosystems, it seems. So yeah, shout out to Door Hacks. Thanks for everything that you guys do.
Yeah, they show up and like they hung out at our Cosmos Paris event. Like, they closed the venue down. So we love an enthusiastic event attendee.
Yeah, we'll have to have them on sometime. Maybe we can have them as a guest.
That'd be fun.
So just talking about a few of the general connections we made while we're there. I spoke to actually 3 different Cosmos chains that I was not expecting to run into there. Actually, all 3 of which I had never heard of, so that was even more surprising. You know, Secret usually knows about other projects in the Cosmos ecosystem, but there are always new projects being created. So that was cool to see some fellow IBC people there at an Ethereum event. Um, we made connections with them. We're going to be seeing what we can do as far as collaboration. 2 of them are public already. One of them is actually in complete stealth mode and was very secretive about what they're building, but looking forward to hearing more about that. I think they're going to be at Cosmoverse, and maybe we'll hear exactly what they're building at Cosmoverse. Spoke to somebody at Trust Wallet. Hopefully we can get Secret on Trust Wallet within the near future. From what it sounds like, it shouldn't be that difficult. So that's exciting. Spoke to a couple of infrastructure related people. Some of them just run nodes on different networks, and they're interested in branching out and supporting Cosmos SDK networks like ourselves. So talking to them. We're working on push notifications for decentralized applications. So basically like on-chain notifications for when something goes on your application that you might need to be notified about. You can get an alert through like a Web2 service like email or Discord or Telegram or something like that. There's a few teams working on stuff like this, but always good to have multiple options. That would be really cool to see. With like Shade Protocol specifically, if you had some kind of notification for maybe when you're maybe like reach a certain amount of rewards, or like if you're borrowing or lending, if you get notifications on liquidations and stuff like that, that'd be pretty cool. And other than that, another person that we saw there, we saw a secret validator actually. That was pretty cool to see someone from the secret network there in person, who we didn't expect to see. We spoke to Axelar. There was actually a few other Cosmos people there. Ethan Bookman, I believe is how you pronounce his last name, actually did a speech. He got up on stage, and the rest of the informal systems team was there with him, or some of them at least. So that was cool to see some other people there, just kind of like on our side, people from the Cosmos ecosystem.
Didn't he jump in the pool?
I don't know. Did that happen?
I was quite surprised to see people actually in the pool. I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, it was a pretty cool venue. It was at a nightclub. Obviously, it had been like converted for a conference, but it was a Toronto's biggest nightclub, and they did have like a swimming pool behind it, which I'm not sure if they actually opened up for the conference part or if people just decided to jump in anyway. I was wondering if that might happen.
Yeah. I mean, they had like the flamingos. It looked, if they weren't trying to make it look enticing, like they failed, because they had pool, like they had inflatables. It looked like they wanted people to swim.
It was hot out. I was definitely thinking about it. So striking, tell us maybe a little bit about the other connections that you made while you were at the event, other than Secret.
Well, I got to tell you, it was really interesting going through the list, the agenda of who is speaking, and the different people that were going to take the stage. And one of the things that I caught my eye was I see this thing that says a new interpretation of the Pink Floyd experience, and I was like, wait, what? And so I looked into it, and it was it was a project by this group called Loot 8, and another one Symposium or Synthos. I can't remember the name of it, but the common person between those two projects was a gentleman by the name of Scott Page, and Scott is a saxophone player that played with Pink Floyd, played with Toto, Fleetwood Mac, Supertramp, and pretty much any of those era bands in which you hear a large horn section. And as a fan of many of those bands, I really couldn't believe it. Um, and I don't know if how many of you have watched the show The Diplomat, but if you haven't, one of those songs and one of his saxophone solos comes in at the end of one of the final season. It was quite interesting to see him up there. So I had him on the show and to talk about his project, which is an NFT project that doesn't require you to have a wallet and is blockchain agnostic too. And it was very interesting going through that, and that's for another day. But it was very interesting to see someone from that was essentially playing music in the 80s and early 90s, starting an NFT project. And that, it's the I would have to say he's at least 70 years old, but he's out there every day pitching it. I thought that was very exciting to listen to. And not only that, but the performance they gave, and all of a sudden a mosh pit opened up, and well, not a mosh pit, but the front area opened up and people started dancing during a conference. It's like, okay, that's the first time I've seen that at a conference. So that was at least entertaining. But what was really informative was listening to Charles Hodgkins. Excuse me, I trip on his name all the time. Charles Hodgkinson talk about new types of ways to think about governance for either blockchains or token projects or just digital asset projects in general, in which you have a governance model. And right now, most of the governance models out there have the ability to completely change everything with a 51% vote. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad, as we saw with Tornado Cash with a vote nobody paid attention to. Hackers just took over Tornado Cash. But he spoke about it and used the words like constitution, and some aspects of the governance model are able to be changed, with simple votes. Other aspects are more difficult to change because it's a more important part of the underlying principle of the project. And then some parts of it are sacred and are really not able to be changed. And I thought that was a very interesting conversation, and the people listening, you could see people in the crowd nodding and listening to it, like, yes, this seems to be a better way of doing things. And so I expect to see more of his speeches and other types of proposals come out of his organization, especially with Cardano and things like that, that follow that model that he was talking about. And of course, the big topics that I saw that I was really excited to, because I cover this on my shows a lot, is that about regulation. And as we all know, being I'm based in the U.S., but also based in Canada, regulation is a quagmire. And while Canada seems to be a little bit ahead of the U.S. in some areas, the U.S. is just dragging the whole Western Hemisphere down, it seems like. And so it was really good to hear the different panels about regulation and where governments stand on things, and especially Lisa's platform too. The panel that she moderated, I think it was about the future of financial services, and like as I say, it's a Futurist Conference. So it was good to hear people talking about how they see things coming down the road. So those were very exciting things, for me, in my opinion, because they related to things I know about, like Pink Floyd, and things I like to cover about regulation and where things are going. Because as we all know in this industry, every 6 months it's totally different. And so kind of trying to get an idea of what's to come even 6 months or a year down the road is very interesting, and good for everybody to listen to. And as they say, try and plan. But as I also say, what's the old phrase, you make plans and God laughs at you, or something like that. Yeah. Man plans, God laughs, as the Mrs. Striking says from the distance. But that was my my take on it.
Yep. The crypto scape is always changing. You never know.
That was great. Thanks so much for that, like that rundown. I missed some of those talks that you mentioned, like Charles Hoskinson. So I think I'm going to go back and watch it because the replay is all up live and everything. So, but yeah, I think regulation is super interesting, and I'm wondering what's happening. I know Illinois was talking about passing a law where anybody if the courts ask somebody to fork a blockchain, they would have to do so, which is like absolutely ridiculous to even imagine. How would that happen? Even when we all decide to fork something, we can't do it. It takes months and months. So having a court injunction force
Yeah,
that,
I did. I remember that coming through. Yeah.
yeah. So I think it's interesting to see the clash. I won't say the merge, but the clash between the regulatory system and the blockchain technology and the blockchain culture in particular. So that's really that's where my interest lies right now as well. And as you said, Canada is a little bit ahead on clarity, but not necessarily ahead on innovation. So there's a lot of innovation in the US. It's just being stifled at the moment.
That's for sure.
I was wondering if we have questions from our audience. Feel free to post them in the chat there. I'm sorry I wasn't able to talk earlier on in the spaces, but wanted to get a chance to really thank you for coming on. And your spot at the back of the stage was so perfect. Like, I thought about it afterwards, how brilliant it was, because all your interviews had the stage in the background. It looked great. And then you also got to see a lot of things happening just by the spot that you had. So I'm looking forward to seeing a lot
it
of your
was
content.
really good.
Yeah. And so I kind of consider you the expert on, like, you told us what the most surprising thing, and I know Scott Page and his NFT project, he was part of the same BNB Founders Academy that I went to. And so I got to hear him firsthand talk about his project. And I agree, it's pretty interesting. Also, Floyd Mayweather did an NFT a couple years ago, so another older guy getting into the NFT space. But I just wondered, that was maybe the most surprising thing. What was or maybe that was the most entertaining thing. What was the most surprising thing, or was there anything else that kind of took you off guard?
Yeah, so there was, and it was the gentleman that developed. I can't remember the name of his project. Developed was talking about the film industry and how there's a platform for getting funding for small independent people to fund their films and things like that. And he told an amazing story, which actually ended up in the blockchain futurist wrap up video about his particular story about going from rags to riches and then back to rags and then back to riches was very entertaining and different than all of the other speeches that were given. The speeches that were given were technical, were regulatory, were very topic about crypto. And he gave more of a life story on how to persevere and how to, make those extra calls when you need to get a job done. Make 10 calls. Okay, I've made 10 calls. Make 20 calls. Make 50 calls. And he said he got to made 1,000 calls, and that last one, the person said yes to funding his project.
Wow.
And that I can't recall the details of the film funding part of it, but just his story about persevering and that the work you need to put into it was really interesting to me. And it was surprising because I had listened to so many speeches about, like I said, about technical aspects of this, about protocols of that. This is our token. Here's our blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, a gentleman gets up on stage and speaks, first of all, very eloquently, and builds a story and does the storytelling in a manner that captivates the audience. And I really enjoyed that. And I was, as they say, I was quite surprised to hear a speaker like that.
I can talk a little bit more about my experience, although it wasn't based on anything that was really happening at the conference or on the stage itself, because I was kind of heads down at the booth the entire time. Oh, let's see, it looks like Jay wants to get up on stage. I'm going to bring him up now.
Because while Patrick is doing that, I'll expand on the venue they had it at was, usually you go to these things in a convention center, and convention centers are generally quite boring. But having it in like probably the largest club and as someone that's not used to going to clubs, but going and seeing just how digital the club is now with all the TVs and the lights, it made for a spectacular venue. And even the upstairs where you guys were, that kind of that greenhouse look to it and the view over the city. I mean, it was that was amazing. It was a really good spot.
Yeah, that really was
Yeah,
perfect
it
for a
was. I
blockchain
think
conference.
the only challenge was the temperature. It was like it got really hot up there with the greenhouse effect after a while, but it was beautiful.
Yeah, downstairs we froze part of the time.
We have Jay on stage now. We also have Michael. What's up, Michael?
Hey, how's it
I'll let
going?
Jay go first since he requested.
Hey, really quickly, long-time listener, first-time caller. Just wanted, Secret's been making a lot of appearances at a lot of events globally, and now that now that it's like the third or fourth opportunity, how does Toronto compare? How does Futurist compare to some of the other events that Secret's been participating in, whether it be speaking ops or whatnot, as we build the ethos of Secret Network in different arenas? How does this one compare? And then in moving forward towards the next events, what is the goal of actionability? That's to anybody.
I would probably answer that as comparing it to more Cosmos focused events, and with our goal being to reach out to more of the Ethereum community and the EVM ecosystem. Lisa, would you agree with that? That's kind of the direction we want to go, and this was definitely a good step towards that.
Yeah, for sure. I'd say that. Well, I love Futurist because it's slightly different, and the venue is different. It just has a different feel. But I think we're moving towards a slightly different vibe for events going in the blockchain space. I mean, I've been in blockchain for 6 years. I've been to so many different events, and a lot of them have, like you said, a lot of them are pretty boring venues. So I hope that this is the trend towards more interesting venues, less scripted formats, more like interaction between people. I'm going to Web Summit in Lisbon. I don't know if anybody else is planning to go there, but that's a huge one. I think they had 80,000 people last year, and it's really hard to find your space in all of that. But they're doing a great job of making it so that you can find your tribe. They have like startup spaces, and they have investor spaces, and meetup spaces. So I think we need a revamp of the whole conference scene. It's a great thing for blockchain. It's the only way we get to see each other since we're so dispersed. But it is pretty exhausting still to be at a conference, and I'd like to see more innovation happen in the space.
Can I chime in real quick?
Yeah, I
Coming
was
from
gonna
the
say, sorry, Michael. Michael is the co-founder of DecentralCon, so I'm sure he has some relevant point of view here.
yeah, like we've seen a lot of like different events around the world, and like you guys picked great ones like Futurist, sorry, and then ETH Toronto. Web Summit is really good as well. I'm actually going to be going to like Token 2049, and there's another one like Korean Blockchain Week. But like, even for us at Decentral, we're like, hey, we're not going to host an event this year. The reason why is because it doesn't feel right in terms of like kind of like the way that the communities are now mainly focusing on kind of like building. So like we don't want to have like the Miami to be a disruption of like the kind of like the party vibe. So we're actually pushing ourselves to Tokyo. Just I wanted to hop in here and let you guys know that you guys are always welcome if you guys want to speak on stage at Decentral Tokyo. Would love to have you guys. And then there was also another thing.
Michael?
September. Let me double check. Because it's gonna be right after Token 2049, September 19th and 20th at Shibuya Stream Hall, which is at Shibuya Square. So the famous big walkway, the big square within Tokyo, we're literally within walking distance from it for our venue.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
But yeah, I wanted to also jump on to ask you guys a little bit, like a quick question. I noticed that you guys are pushing a lot for like especially for the events, to get a lot of like people to build products, onboard the community and help developers as well. I actually am pivoting away from decentral and creating decentralized trust structures, having them on chain and everything. So just wondering, how do I kind of like go through that process? Do I just kind of like talk to you guys about it, or just submit through the grants process, or get connected with a team? Because I feel like I really want to build on Secret Network.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely connect with us. We can talk through what the options are. I also was wondering, like, about, you mentioned Tokyo, and I'm wondering, you said you're moving away from, I wasn't quite sure what you're moving away from and to, but I did want to know if you're seeing Asia as being the most interesting up and coming space in our industry.
Oh yeah. The US, if you looked at like events across the board, has fallen off. You look at like participation rates in some of the other previous events that are here. You're looking at consensus, permissionless. Permissionless is switching over to Austin. Consensus last year was last year was like a little bit okay. I mean, last year was really good, but like this year they're kind of like, not as many attendees. You're looking at NFT NYC. You're looking at kind of like some of the other ones. Mainnet's another good one, but also for that one too, it's like it's kind of like a consolidation of events, slowly kind of like not creating it to where there's mass amounts of events. But also a lot of people are scaling down their side on the US, while in Asia it's kind of like a completely 180. Asia is more like Asia's more open, and like they're more of a, think of us as like in a bear market and they're in a bull market. Like those the participants in Asia want to go to events. Token 2049 is going to be huge, and it's a different type of market over there, especially with like the innovation that's happening. If you look at like the two countries that have the most amount of developers that are going to be India and Vietnam. Both of them are also in Asia. A lot of the attendees are going to be going to Token 2049 as well. So that's why we kind of like chose Japan, because Japan was also a hard region to kind of also interact with as well, to kind of like outsiders. But we were able to get into the Japanese market to host Decentral Tokyo.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm seeing that too. What do you think about, so I was wondering also, Striking, if you have any thoughts about Asia? Or anybody else?
I think Asia is more open, especially with like, if you look at Hong Kong. Hong Kong is now having they're opening the doors to kind of be more crypto friendly. Japan is also looking at being more crypto friendly as well. What was it? Korea is basically the Terra, and a lot of the things happened with them. So like they're still kind of like a little bit on the back end fence, but there's still a lot of investments going on into that region, especially building. They're going more towards the gaming side a little bit as well. So like you're looking at different use cases for different regions right now that are emerging in Asia that is not seen within the Western hemisphere, right? We don't see a lot of their innovations, because sometimes it's going to be in a different language.
Hey, Michael, if you want to DM me about that, decentralized trust project that you're working on. I'd love to talk about that.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, well, I would love to know about South America as well, because South America, I'm just seeing a lot of developer enthusiasm, where, you know, in the US, we might be seeing a little fatigue on what I'm hearing in Brazil, in Argentina, we're seeing that developers are just really eager to get new technologies. And I'm wondering if anyone has any direct knowledge of that.
So for South America, South Africa, and Australia, those three regions are they're kind of like a little bit behind in terms of kind of like the developer support. So we're starting to see like a lot of the layer ones, like we're starting to see Avalanche go into Asia a little bit, but they're targeting specific countries. So one of the things that I did at Polygon when I was working with Polygon for marketing was target certain demographics in certain regions in order to basically create a user base there and start creating a community within each one of those. South America, there's a lot of really talented developers down there, but it's kind of like it's really hard to find unless you pinpoint and target them and find a way to bring them together. But it is also a lot of them don't want to travel to other countries and everything. In Asia, it's kind of like a little bit more of like everyone can kind of go everywhere. In Africa as a continent has a lot of really talented developers as well, especially around like the South Africa part. For that portion, you could target it through like different, I would say like side events and stuff. But in terms of like targeting at a massive scale, our strategy was always going to be US, Asia, and then trickle into the other markets. Cardano's marketing strategy was going into Africa first, and then pushing into the other regions. Avalanche's strategy was pushing into Avalanche, Solana, and a few others. Their strategy was pushing into Asia first, and then pushing into like US and Europe. So it just depends on like where you're targeting the use cases for it, but whichever region you target, definitely give them a lot of support for it.
Yeah, super interesting. Thanks for the context. It's such a global industry, right? So it's hard. It's tough to choose between. Do you go to Singapore? Do you go to Tokyo? Do you go to Hong Kong? I'm really bullish on Asia right now, especially Hong Kong, Singapore, now Tokyo. Since you told me about, and I agree with you. Japan is a really interesting market. I've been hearing that. It's just not as easy to penetrate that market.